And welcome everybody to the Big D Zone. I am your host, Prince DJ. And before we get started with our special program, I would be remiss if I would forget to wish all of our veterans a happy Veterans Day. This is for those who not only served our military, one of the greatest military in the world, and also for those who have paid the ultimate price for what we could do in this great country of ours. So thank you, veterans, and thank you for all that you have done for all branches in the military. Now, when I used to listen to Coast to Coast AM with George Noy, I loved it when he does the near-death experience, and he either has people who testify about near-death experience, or sometimes they might do it on open mic, or sometimes he does have Dr. Long on for the one that wrote Life After Life, and it's always interesting to me, and I was interested ever since that I was either before I got married, after I was married, and then after I became a widower, and I'm still fascinated by that. Well, I got a treat for you. This is my own version of Coast to Coast, but it's not Coast to Coast AM. Oh no, it's Coast to Coast 15 country. So with that, I would like to welcome author, and she is I would say like a lay minister, and her name is Leah Chrest, and she's the author of The Edge of the Jordan, and also It's Okay to Be Okay. She is a math teacher, and I'm going to let her explain to us the rest of her ministry work that she's doing for the Lord. So, Leah, welcome to Big D Country. Welcome to the Balance. Welcome to the second balance, that is.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Let me just tell you about kind of where this journey started for me and where it's taken me. And I want to share that you and I have something in common. And, I'm a widow, you're a widower. And oh my gosh, like you said, knowing about near-death experiences, knowing what waits for us on the other side has eased that journey. I mean, it's never easy, but it has certainly given me hope in that process of losing my husband. So my journey in light of Veterans Day starts with my grandfather. I grew up Catholic. I went to Catholic school all the way through college. And my grandfather was my faith inspiration. I could just tell, had zero doubt in his mind or heart about the existence of God and that God was there for him. And he had some pretty wild experiences, too, that we won't get into because it's not about him. But at one point in my mid-20s, I went to him. I was just so inspired by his faith, and I said, Pop, I see that you are so certain of your faith. How can you be so sure that God exists and that God is who you believe he is? And he looked at me really calmly and said, Leah, if you've seen what I've seen, how can you not believe? And I said, well, I want to have the experiences that you do. And he laughed and he said, well, you're in your mid-20s. I'm almost 90. You just got to give it time. And if anybody listening is still doubting the existence of a loving God, I would give the same advice. I'm in my early 40s now, and yes, giving it time was all I needed. Shortly after that conversation, the Holy Spirit brought into my life the Washington Post magazine, which my husband read faithfully every weekend, and I almost never touched unless it was Dave Barry's Year in Review, which I loved. But besides that, I didn't read it. And there was a book report on, God in the Afterlife was the name of the book by Dr. Jeffrey Long. And as you might guess, it was about near-death experiences. I read the book review and thought, I've got to buy this book. And I didn't buy books. Never read the Washington Post magazine, didn't buy books, but I did, and read that in 2 days, and that book was the beginning of that change in my life. I read 500 near-death experiences after that because I just couldn't get enough. And then following all of that, my husband would watch sports every night, and I like sports. Sorry, man, I know, like, in the castle, like, the sports are a big thing, and I'm an NFL fan too, but I'm not as into it as my husband was or you are, and I struggled to, like, stay focused for, like, 2 hours of sports every night. So I needed something to do while he was watching sports, so I decided I'm going to write a book. And so I wrote At the Edge of the Jordan, and it is a narrative nonfiction account. So if you had the biggest, baddest, most amazing near-death experience you could possibly imagine, and it included all the possible features of what majority of people have experienced, what would it be like? And so the story follows a woman named Ashlyn who dies, obviously, has a very extensive near-death experience, and then comes back and has to integrate it. And then in the back, like 30 pages of the book is footnotes, extensive footnotes, where any point in the book, if you're like, I wonder where Leah pulled that from, did she pull it out of her butt, or is this like really, truly something that came from her first-hand account? And you can go find that first-hand account of where I brought that from. And usually there were multiple, but I gave you my favorites. And so you can go click on those if you're reading the virtual book, or type in your Google browser, or get the book out of the library and go read them for yourself. And so my hope is that this would give hope and life to people who either struggle with their faith, like I did once, or who are looking for just a deeper relationship with God and have that curiosity. And it's an easy read. And I've had multiple people since this book was published about 4 years ago come up to me and say, you know, this really has changed my life, that it's given me that change in perspective that I desperately needed. So that leads me up to who I am, and I'm a contemplative Christian, I guess a lay preacher. A contemplative Christian just means it's the part of your faith that we don't always not all denominations, but a lot of denominations kind of push aside. You know, almost all denominations focus on Scripture. They focus on tradition of the church, but they don't always focus on your personal experience of God. And that is equally as important as the Bible and church tradition in guiding us on our walk with Christ. And so being a contemplative Christian just means that I teach people how to connect with the Holy Spirit. And to do that, it's not just praying. It's not just spouting off words. Jesus went off alone to pray like every morning before his ministry. I don't think he was sitting there just talking at God for 2 hours. I think he spent a lot of time listening. And so contemplative Christianity is about listening. It's about deep listening to the voice of the Spirit and learning how to discern that voice. And so that's what I teach. I'm a lay preacher at my church, and so I preach a few times a year there, and I am a blogger, and then I also wrote at the It's Okay to Be Okay, which is a book about grief recovery from the Christian perspective and about leaning into those challenging times of life and not just being okay through it, but actually thriving as God intended us, that those challenges can bring us greater and fuller life. And I think I've talked enough, so I'm going to pass it back to you, sir.
Okay, I'm going to think about having you return back on the show. One of these days, if I ever redo the encouraging ministry, because even when we're talking about near-death experience, I can hear your voice is so angelic. You're so passionate about what you're sharing. Now, what is your favorite recount story? And I know before the broadcast, you tell me that you didn't have your own personal experience, but you wrote your own book, like you said, and then you like to read about other people, just like myself. And so, what is your favorite account about NDE?
Wow. You know, so I'm just going to tell you the one. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's one that comes to mind right now, which is, so I'm assuming this is the Holy Spirit telling me that somebody needs to hear this today. You know, honestly, I can't even find the source where this one came from, because I read all these, a lot of them before I ever decided to write the book, and I did not keep a log of every single one I read. You know, I only had like 100 at access where I could just go grab the source. But there was one I read, and it just was so beautiful that at one point in their experience, they were in like the equivalent of like a football stadium. I know you're big into football, so we'll go with a football stadium. And they're standing in the middle of the stadium with their guardian angel, and there are, thousands and thousands of souls in the stands cheering them on. And, I think that was just, it really struck me, because I think so often we get discouraged in life. We feel like we're just done, right? Like life is just tough. There's so much going on. We're experiencing so much pain. We have to witness other people's pain. And the reason we're here in this life is to grow. It's to face challenge, and it's to grow, our souls to grow. And, keeping the sports analogy, athletes, professional athletes, they train hard. And that's in the Bible too, about, fighting the good fight, winning the race, pushing on for the prize. And that training of the soul, earth is the ideal training ground for your soul, because you got all kinds of stuff coming at you all the time. And you have to find love and learn how to love in the face of its opposite. And when we're on earth, there's so much where you get to see the opposite of love and have to choose to love anyway. And so this particular near-death experience, she's in the middle of this amphitheater of people cheering her on, and she was an ordinary person. This wasn't somebody who had, won the Nobel Peace Prize or anything. This is just somebody just like you and me who's going through the regular thing of life. But because that we are heroes, our souls are doing heroic things every day. When you wake up and you got to go through your day, and maybe you have, a marriage that is struggling, or maybe you were abused as a child, or maybe you're in the middle of a situation where financially you're struggling, or you're dealing with a severe illness. Whatever it is, that situation God is using to help you grow and to help people around you to grow. And you are a hero. You are celebrated for waking up every day in faith and in trust and pushing forward. And when you get to the other side, like, none of that is wasted. And you'll look back and say, wow, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I did this, like an athlete does when they finish their workout and they're like sore, they can barely stand up, and they say, but I'm stronger now. And I think that's one of the biggest things I got from near-death experiences, was that realizing that everything we do is for a purpose, is for growth. And the more love and light we can give to the world, of course, that's what we're going to do. But just know that everything you do is blessed. It has a purpose, and that you have a purpose, and God has a plan for you. And not a single thing that has happened in your life will go unnoticed. Every single positive thing that you do is noticed, is recognized, is seen, and is loved.
I want to thank you for mentioning in the story where they had an NDE about a football field. It's just so funny that you mentioned that, because before the session earlier today, I just did the one of the aftermath of the week of the NFL pickup. But actually telling the story, I was sent to the I had a vision, I had a flashback of all the lessons that I learned about the Bema seat of the judgment seat of Christ, which is something that hopefully that we're all get to experience, the good judgment, where we could receive rewards in heaven, and to lay clouds at Jesus' feet. And when you were saying about the angels being in the middle, that was the same place where I was picturing the Bema seat, the judgment seat of Christ being in the middle. And it was so awesome that it put it in that in that light. I guess it's almost like what would happen in a shared death experience. Have you? Is there any stories in one of the books that you read about shared death experience?
Absolutely, yeah. Shared death experience is something I've definitely read about, and that is powerful as well. It's one of those things that kind of confirms a lot of it, especially if one person comes back and the person continues to pass on. And so, yeah, I definitely read some of that as well.
And so a lot of these experience, a lot of the testimonies always starts out whether it's if the death happened at home or if the death happened somewhere else, like either in another place or in a hospital, and the victim leaves the body, but before he goes into the tunnel, he or she always sees the doctors or people trying to frantically save their lives, trying to frantically bring them back. But before they do, that's when they enter the tunnel and get every piece of the near-death experience. Like you said, some people see the tunnel, some people just go straight to whether heaven or hell or whatever experience that they go through. So, do you account of you know, the soul leaving the body and seeing the resuscitation efforts?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's one of the most powerful like proofs that near-death experiences are real, is those accounts of things that they wouldn't know otherwise. And I think that that's super powerful. Yeah, so the majority of experiencers, for sure, witness, like they look down on their bodies and they see it as like they don't even care about it anymore. It's just a thing, which is, I think, important. And I think on one hand, our bodies are holy vessels that our souls are inhabiting during our lifetimes here, and so we ought to treat them with care and respect. But just like we would discard, maybe, I got remarried a year ago, and my wedding dress from the second wedding, I donated because it was wonderful. I loved it. I looked beautiful on the day of the wedding, or so I hope. But then I donated. I passed it on because it was just a thing. It had meaning. I had the pictures, but it was just a thing. And our bodies are also viewed on the other side as it's just once your soul leaves, there is no more attachment to that. And then, yes, the light is a common feature, and not in the way that's like, oh, don't go to the light. It's just, I think, a feeling of love and brilliance. The light, talk about in the Bible, the light of God and the light of Christ, and it's just pure love, and I think it's the energy of love. That's what I personally believe it is. And then usually after that, most souls, not all, but most, experience a life review where they're shown, and not only just shown, but they get to become active participants, like almost reliving various parts of their life, and not just from their own perspective, but in many cases from the perspective of other people involved. So, for instance, one day you and I might be reliving this interview and not only experiencing our own emotions, but also each other's emotions during the interview, and everybody listening and their emotions and thoughts. And so it's that full experience where you're experiencing all this at the same time. And the benefit of this is you get to see, it's the teaching of empathy, right? That you're able to see, oh, that was the effect of that choice on that person. And so for all the good things that we do, we get to experience that and feel, the joy that came from it. And the mistakes that we made, the places where we chose not to be loving, we also get to learn from those as well. I will put the caveat there that it seems that those people, like if you have already learned a lesson, like God is not interested in punishment. He's not interested in making you suffer for something you did. He's interested in you learning from your mistakes and growing. So let's say that you did something, whatever heinous thing that you believe you did or did do as a younger person. If you have made it right, if you've learned your lesson, you never have to see that again on the other side. It's over. It is wiped clean. It is only those things that we still have to learn from that we don't fully understand. That's what we're shown. And it's for the purpose of having us grow. And almost without fail, the guides on the other side, the angels or Jesus himself or whoever's, maybe a relative, whoever's with them during that life review, it's almost universal that the person does not feel judged by anyone but themselves. The whole purpose is that they are self-reflective and able to learn the lessons and integrate that into their soul. So I'll pause there and toss it back to you.
All right, and so Catholics believe in purgatory. There's not too many Christians that don't believe in purgatory. It's only usually heaven and hell. Even the same thing with Muslims. It's only heaven and hell. Have you ever seen any in any accounts of the near-death experience that you have read? Is there any accounts of anybody being in purgatory?
That's a really good question. So not distinctively purgatory, no. I can't say that there was like a place that was purgatory, but there is a sense of a healing of the soul. So let's say, this is probably the closest to purgatory that I know of. My late husband was an alcoholic, and he died of liver cirrhosis. So he did die clean, so he was no longer addicted to alcohol when he died, and was clean for several months before his passing. So he got to do a lot of his healing on this side, in his body. However, let's say he had died several months earlier as still an addict, and he had everything that goes with that as he crossed over. There are places, in some of the experiences I've read, for people who are dying in the midst of addiction, or maybe died due to suicide, or something more severe where they were self-inflicting harm of some sort, or maybe were involved in behaviors that were very unloving. And they are brought into a place with people or souls who have on similar journeys, with kind of a mentor figure. And so it's almost like camp for the soul to help them to overcome whatever battle that might be. And usually the senior, the guide that's mentoring them has already overcome that themselves and can guide. So sometimes there's angels there as well, but it's usually souls who are helping others through it. It's almost like, AA or, NA or some of those groups where you have the sponsors and the sponsees. It's almost like that on the other side, where it's like more experienced souls who have already overcome these difficulties, helping others to process whatever it was that was holding them back in their life. And again, it's just love, and it's purifying, like you said. So in that sense, I guess that's kind of purgatory, because they're in a place where they're still processing out whatever was difficult for them and healing from that in their own time with guidance, with help. They're never left alone, so that they can enter more fully into God's glory.
All right, and have you seen stories of pets in the afterlife, whether it's in heaven or in different planets that you said about? Have you seen any stories about pets?
Okay, that's really interesting. I think there were a couple, but it wasn't something I really honed in on. I mean, I love my animals. I have a dog and 2 cats myself, but I think there have been a couple where they were there, but it wasn't super prevalent. I think the majority of the time when the people cross and the souls cross over, it's usually relatives or close, very, very close friends who they meet. But I think there were 1 or 2 out of the 500 where it was a pet. And maybe because for that particular soul, that was the perfect greeter, was that animal, the soul of that animal, because that was their closest, most, for some people, they may not bond really well with other humans. Their life may have been filled with a lot of really negative interactions, and maybe that pet was the symbol of love for them, of unconditional love. And so in those cases, it might be a pet. But I think ordinarily, when you cross over, the first that you see is usually a trusted relative, someone who served as a mentor to you. An angel is very typical, or like I said, and probably maybe 20 of the 500, it was Jesus himself who greets. And so that's pretty cool too.
All right, if we're going to go all in with the NDE, we got to talk about everything. So, is there any what part of the sources that you read about are hellish experience, and how many people, whether they were afraid of hell and they're more afraid of hell, or if they were shown hell to tell other people about it and tell them, hey, there's a better way, there's another way to heaven. Tell me about the hellish experience that you might have read.
Yeah, I've read a couple, and I don't know the percentage. I feel like it's less than 10% of all near-death experiences would qualify as hellish. Um, I believe that the major reason for this, of having the hellish experiences, is dying in a state of extreme fear, extreme guilt, or feeling of unworthiness. Occasionally it is in a place of self-centeredness. One of the most common examples, if you're an NDE person, you'll probably have read Howard Storm, Descent into Death, I believe is what it's called. He had a really wild, he is one of my favorite NDEs for sure, and that's an actual book, and most libraries have it. It's one of the ones that's written probably more than 15 years ago, but they still have copies usually in circulation because it's that good. And he was an atheist before he passed, and I think just very kind of narcissistic. And his experience of hell was that at one point he remembered, I believe it was prayers that he said when he was a child, and then started saying those prayers, and the demons that were literally eating the skin off of him. It was, they would start backing away. And so he started saying the prayers louder and louder until the demons fled. And then the light came through, and he was rescued by Jesus himself and brought to this. That he came back, when he came back to his body, he was fully converted, and I think he became a Christian minister. So pretty wild. And there are similar experiences like that of people who have hellish experiences, but even within the near-death experience, go to the light. I think that's really cool. There's that redemption piece, that hell is not meant to be a final destination. Again, God is not in the interest of punishing. He's in the interest of healing and of growth and of redemption. I think the will of God is that all souls return to him. And I believe, after reading all these near-death experiences, that if we put in our mind the image of the most loving parent we can possibly imagine, and God is not more loving than that most loving parent, we've got a wrong image of God, because God is pure love. And what loving parent would tell any child that they're not welcome? No matter what they've done, they are always welcomed home. And that's the story of the prodigal son. So we are allowed to be prodigal, not preferred, but when we are a prodigal son or daughter, we are always welcomed home, and the gates to heaven are always open. All we have to do is look up. The other one that I love, and it was one of those ones, again, just like the one with the amphitheater, that I wish I made a log of where I had found all these, because they stuck with me. But it's not one that I have a footnote for. But I just love this image. It was angels pacing over the hellish realm, just pacing and just looking down and just waiting for any of the souls to look up and ask for help. Because as soon as they do, they're up and out of there. And then there's just tears coming from the angels' eyes as they weep over the suffering, because they don't want us to suffer, but they can't force us to come to the light. We can't force us, just like you can't, and in my book I have this description of hell, and I have the angels crying over them, and Ashlyn is with Jesus at the time, and she sees what this man is going through, this man's soul, and she turns to him and is screaming at Jesus, and she says, "Why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you saving her?" And so her or him, and Jesus turns to Ashlyn and says, as a mother, if you have a young child who's screaming and crying and throwing a tantrum, and you go try to give that child a hug, are they going to accept that hug? And usually not. The kid is going to wail on you and hit you. And he says, but what if you give it a minute or two and just stand there peacefully and lovingly, just wait and witness? well, then, yeah, the child will eventually calm down and turn and then be open to that love. And this is what we have to do. There's no other way. We can't force ourselves on them. And then he says, if you think I haven't done enough, look at the cross. I've given everything for these souls. I would do anything, and I already have. So, yeah.
Those were amazing. I did see the video of the first one that you talked about, and and also, like I said, if we're going to talk about near-death experience, might as well go through it all. You also said talked about reincarnation, and there was this movie called Defending Your Life. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, Meryl Streep, and also. I was wondering, what are your favorite stories about reincarnation? People reincarnation about either another person or maybe pets or something like that. So, if you did see the movie, what is your perspective about it? And what is your favorite stories about reincarnation?
Again, great question. So I'm going to talk about reincarnation in general. As far as specific stories, generally speaking, and this is a difficult topic, especially for Christians, because I think we grow up thinking reincarnation is an Eastern idea. And when I first read near-death experiences, I had the same belief. And the reason why I did not traditionally publish this book, or even attempt to traditionally publish this At the Edge of the Jordan, was because I did not want this book touched by a traditional publisher, because I wanted it to be Christian, but also to be true to what I understood to be true from the evidence. And the evidence is that the majority, I would say maybe 70%, if not higher than that, of near-death experiences that speak on whether there's reincarnation or not, lean towards reincarnation. So if you base it on the evidence, yeah, reincarnation is a thing. And when we talk about that, we're not talking about like coming back as a butterfly. We're talking about getting to grow and evolve forever. And if you're a Christian, the way I kind of get around this, or to like kind of make peace with it if you struggle with this, is to realize that when you cross over, God is in the business of continually purifying you to become perfect, like Christ is perfect. And that is going to happen regardless of whether you come back in a different body or you stay over there. The purpose is your soul doesn't stop growing. Because I can tell you, I know a lot of people on this earth, including myself, and we're not perfect. I can say I am definitely not perfect. And if I were to be finished growing right now, that's disappointing. Because I have a lot of things that I know that need purifying, that need work. And so reincarnation is just the idea that we continue to learn lessons, we continue to grow. Reincarnation informs so much of what helps near-death experiences make sense. The idea is that we continue to grow over thousands of lifetimes, but not only on this planet. So Earth, like I said to you, I think before the show, is like a training ground where we have to experience so much stuff, so much difficult stuff, that it really is. That's why that amphitheater of cheering us on. If you chose to be on Earth, you are really choosing boot camp. Earth is boot camp because a lot of, I would just say not love, you can call it evil, you can call it whatever you want to call it, is allowed on Earth. That God allows it to be here so that we can grow in the face of what is not love. There are other places in the universe where that is not the case, where there is not the pressure, where there is not the pain, that you can grow without all this. But this is the quickest and fastest way to grow. And so reincarnation is really just knowing that you chose to come here. You planned out how you wanted to grow, the people, the souls you wanted in your life, the challenges you wanted to face, the help you wanted to receive and what you wanted to accomplish in this lifetime. A lot of us have picked that. And so when you're in the middle of something tough in your life, like when, you and I have lost our spouses, that crossed my mind is, all right, so maybe, I don't know for sure, but maybe I picked this. Like, my greatest fear is losing my spouse, and it happened. And now what? And I kind of felt the Holy Spirit telling me, now what is you just faced your greatest fear, and you've walked through it, and you're okay. Now what are you going to do to minister to other people, to help them? And so whatever's going on in your life, I would just look for the patterns, look for the themes. What keeps popping up again and again and again? What challenges keep rearing their ugly heads over and over and over again? Because whatever that is, that's probably what you're here to learn, what you're here to grow from. And so just near-death experiences teach us to be students of life and listeners to the Holy Spirit so that we can pass through this world with joy, with peace, with purpose, knowing that God's got our back. We are always loved, we are always cared for, and everything we do has a purpose.
That is absolutely amazing, and that's so true. And I'm a believer, and as well, and just like with JD was introducing his mom, and she said that she's a believer, but she's not perfect either. I could testify that the same thing. I'm not perfect. I still slip up because of I'm in this flesh, but I got an insight just before I go to the very last question. Now, we all heard about that there is a point in the near-death experience that whether it's Jesus or whatever, the spiritual leader, or sometimes it might be maybe a friend or a family member that tells the person who has the near-death experience it's not their time yet. And some of them wanted to go remain there, but some of them, even though they were willing to finish the work, they feel that is so hard here. But a lot of them just don't have the say so to stay. But what is your interpretation of those having to be sent back?
Yes, that totally is a big part of it, is that decision or being told. And so I don't have an answer for why some souls get to pick to come back or not, and other souls get are just told you're going back. It might be, if we're going with the reincarnation idea, it might be that our souls have different maturities. And so again, and this, I don't know, reincarnation, there's something about that. It helps me be a more loving person on this earth, because we all have been, let's just say we think about it as kindergarten for the soul versus like 6th grade for the soul. Maybe I'm a 2nd grader and this person's still in pre-K spiritually, right? Like I can have a little bit more patience because I realize maybe I've been through this about 50 to 100 times more than they have. And when I was at that point in my soul's evolution, I had just as much trouble with whatever it was, whatever that thing is. And I think it helps us be patient with people as we go through our lives, realizing that, like, I don't know where they've been, what they've experienced, and I was there too at one point, probably. So, people, souls who maybe haven't had as many opportunities on this earth may not have a lot of say in whether they come back or not, because maybe they're not mature enough yet in their souls to see the whole picture and to see why it's important to come back or not. Those that are given a choice, it's a guided choice usually, where they're kind of shown, here's what happens if you go back, here's what happens if you don't, and kind of are encouraged one way or the other. There was a really interesting NDE where someone was asked to stay in heaven, and it was a mother of young children, and she fought so hard. She wanted so badly to come back because she said she was so afraid for her children, and her angels, her guides, said, look, if you stay here, your children are going to learn the lessons they need to learn, because losing a parent is what they picked. They chose to lose a parent, and if you stay here, you're robbing them of that lesson. But she said, no, they need me, they can't. And she pushed back so hard, and the angels got kind of frustrated with her at a point. But they said, okay, you can go back, but we're taking you in a couple of years because your kids still deserve to have that lesson. So you'll be able to go back while they're young, but when they're like in middle school, we're going to bring you back for good. So there is that. Sometimes you do have a bit of a choice, and sometimes you don't have any at all. I do have one of my closest friends I met after I wrote the book, but she had a near-death experience, and she was, I think, in her late 20s, early 30s. She's in her late 60s now. She said she wouldn't wish a near-death experience on anyone, and the reason is because of how hard it is to come back. And she was not given a choice. She was told to come back, and she just came back. But for her, she said it was so jarring going from this place of just incredible love and bliss, and then coming back into the body where we have the pain, the difficulties, the frustrations, and feeling kind of adrift because all the things that once mattered to her, that kept her going, like career motivations, to better yourself, to make more money, to become skilled at this or that, or get that accolade or this award, none of it mattered. The only thing that she could see that mattered was people, right, and the relationships, and being a good mother to her young son kept her going. And so near-death experiences completely alter how you see life, and it takes away, my friend told me, her name's Gail, she said, Leah, you have no idea what it's like to not fear death at all. She's like, you have some idea because you're not as afraid because you've studied this, but once you've had near-death experience, you have no fear of death. And the fear of death is so motivating to us as humans. And so taking that out of the picture, it just completely alters how you go through life, how you experience life. In many ways, it's a beautiful, healing experience. In other ways, it's very difficult to come back without that filter. The other piece of when you come back from the experience is that you no longer you don't have that barrier that a lot of us have between here and the other side. Like people who come back from near-death experiences often have premonitions of what's going to happen in the future because they're not stuck in linear time like we are as much anymore. They can see angels and other beings. Sometimes even like their watches, their wristwatches and computers don't work right because of the energy in their body. There's some really different weird stuff that happens all because of like their energy and who they are and how they're perceiving the world has shifted so much by that experience. So, I guess to sum all that up, that was kind of a little bit everywhere. But, to kind of go back to the positive, God has a plan for us, right? We co-create this experience that we are in right now, whatever your life looks like, was co-created with you and probably your guardian angels for your highest good. And all things work for the good of those who love God, right? And so whatever's going on in your life, again, just trust that it's got a purpose and just know, thank goodness that we have these accounts, that we have these stories, that we know firsthand what is true and can just rely on that for our hope.
Well, Princess Leah, I want to thank you for gracing us in the Second Palace and being the first ever guide to near-death experience and showing us even more because there's even some people that haven't even heard about near-death experience yet, so they haven't even heard of Coast to Coast yet or YouTube videos yet. But I want to thank you for just being the start, just being that spark. So, for those who have not had your book, On the Edge of Jordan, or It's Okay to Be Okay, and also your blog, where can they find your blog, and do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. So I always point people to my blog as a one-stop shop for everything you need. It's thecontemplativechristian.com. That's my website. It's got my blog, of course. You can find links to both my books there, as well as my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is just guided Christian meditations. That's all that is. As well as my Substack, and I'm barely on Instagram or Twitter, but I'm occasionally there. so don't get too excited. But if you want to follow me there, of course, I'd always love to have you. And feel free to reach out either in the comment section of the blog or message me through one of the, Insta or Twitter or whatever. Or I guess it's X now. Man, I'm so old. So, reach out any way that you'd like, and I'm happy to connect with you. And for sure, if this sounds like something you want to learn more about, take a look at the book, or take a look. The other one, it's really good if you want to just read a lot of experiences in general and just read random accounts. It's NDERF.org, I think, NDERF.org. Has like thousands and thousands of near-death experiences, and you kind of got to pick through them for the good ones. But if you just are on a rampage and you want to read 500 of them like I did, it's a great place to start. So, and it's free. So if my book is too much for you, it's like, I think it's like $7 or $8 to get a digital copy, but you can always check NDERF out too and kind of explore this for yourself. So I encourage you to check out the blog or go check out some near-death experiences for yourself, and just have your heart and mind open to know just how wide, deep, high, long is the love of God, because it's amazing, and you are loved more than you can possibly imagine.
And with that, our journey to the afterlife continues. We just had our first guide, and it has just been an amazing experience, especially since we're taping on Veterans Day. And Leah, we're going to have you back sometimes. And then also, if God ever told me to rejoin the Encouragement Ministries, and hopefully when I finally get better. But I want to have you back, and you know what I'm going to do? I usually let my guests sign off in any way that they would, and I let them end the show any way that they want to. But for now, this is the Big D Zone, and I'm going to let our guests close it out.
All right, thank you so much for listening to Big D and the podcast. I'm just going to close this out in prayer. So if you'll just pray with me, dear God, we want to bless all the listeners of this show, that wherever they are, that whatever life is throwing at them, that they may know that you are with them, that you are taking every joy, every tear, every pain, every sorrow. You're working it all for your good and for their good and the good of all those that they love. There is nothing that is unseen, that is uncared for, is unnoticed. And may they just feel wrapped in your love and know that your plan for them is for them to thrive. And if they just lean into, not resist, but lean into your plan for their lives, that they will truly begin to thrive. And so may you open their hearts and their minds to the truth of who you are and your amazing, wonderful plan for their lives. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Y'all have a great night.